If we exist now as something, can there be a time in the past that within the physical laws there aren't laws that operate to form order within disorder?
So you're talking about you? You don't need wings.
No. We need to have some kind of understanding of the world and some truth value about the world, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So what do you have? What do you believe about the world?
What do you mean? I don't have any.
Do you believe everything came by evolutionary ideas that we're familiar with?
Then we take a scientific approach.
Scientific approach to understand the world.
Yes, of course.
How much can science inform us about the world? I mean,
All of it.
all of it?
Why can't? Why wouldn't it?
Okay. What are the epistemic limitations of science?
The fact that we exist right now. I mean, 1,000 years ago, you would have said the Earth is flat and science can't explain it. Science evolves with every century. So you answer the questions that you say are answered by God now will be answered by science in 200, 300 years. Like, for example, people say, we can't explain the Big Bang, therefore God did. It's a very easy answer, but it's not correct.
Okay. So when I ask you about epistemic limitations, because science operates in a particular methodology, right?
Yes.
So
Okay, so
each method in any discipline obviously has its strengths and weaknesses and limitations. Can you think of some limitations of science and the scope of science? I mean, there must be a scope where science operates. You can't just simply say science. As you said, science can answer everything. I mean,
but I agree there are limitations.
yeah.
It can be an echo chamber as well, of the same people coming to the same ideas. I mean, the peer review process has its faults. But it's the best system we have. And also, what the system. I have a feeling you have ideas about it.
I do.
Okay.
So science obviously operates because of the methodology it entails in its operation. Okay. It cannot just simply say, you know what, this is the most smartest man, or this is the most beautiful woman. You know, this doesn't fall into the evidence of science, because what does it mean to be smart? I mean, do you do that through IQ, or someone who has common sense? What exactly is smartness, and what exactly is beauty? If you want to talk, if you want to talk about, say, a piece of literature,
Yes.
and you say, this is so eloquent.
That's art, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a different interpretation.
No.
Science is not.
Remember, you came along with, what's your name?
Connor.
I'm Mansur. Let's introduce ourselves. Sean, Connor,
Kieran.
Sean.
Kieran.
Kieran, I'm Mansur. You see, every discipline avenues of everyday living, we need to know the limitations of it, what we can use, what we cannot use. So you cannot use, as you know from Kieran, because it's not science, so you cannot use a scientific method to somehow make a value judgment on a piece of literature and saying, that's eloquent.
What is saying we should?
Can you?
I agree with that.
Exactly. So this is the point I'm trying to first establish before we talk about our worldviews.
No, I agree with you. I agree on that level.
Khalas means that's it. Okay, fine. We were on the same page. So science has epistemic limitations in terms of what it can answer on.
I agree.
Like, you know that science deals with hows and not whys.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So if I were to ask you a very simple question to show you the limitations of science and scientific method. If we exist now as something, can there be a time in the past where there's absolute nothingness?
Possibly. I mean, it's beyond our comprehension, maybe.
Okay. What do you understand by nothingness?
By nothingness.
Void of space, I guess.
Void, I guess. I mean, that's the thing. You don't know, I don't know.
What if we define what nothingness is, and then perhaps...
I think we can define nothingness
I
by...
mean, our understanding of nothingness will be wrong.
I agree, but maybe the closest way is in space. Is nothing.
Space is not nothing, it's something.
But it isn't,
not,
because
Space is something, right?
Between,
there's no...
in a vacuum, there is literally nothing. Okay, dark matter, dark
So let me give you, there are about 9 levels of nothingness. Okay? So it's not something that we ordinarily assume.
Can I ask before you guys, so where do you get those 9 levels of nothingness from?
From a professor of physics, right? I think she's a German, very well known in YouTube, and appreciated that she actually talked about it, because if you know anything about Professor Lawrence Krauss and his book, The Universe Came From Nothing, this is how the common people are somehow deceived in thinking that, yeah, there is nothingness and the universe came from nothing. When, just to talk about his book, when he actually explains in his book what he means by nothing. Because his nothing is not nothing, there's quantum fluctuations, quantum fields. Okay? So these 9 let me give you an example to illustrate this point. This is what she gave. Imagine someone came and gave you a present in a box, right? Okay, there you go. And you open the box, and there's nothing in there. Now, is that nothing in there? You first, actually, there's no presence what you're expecting, that's nothing. But that doesn't mean it's absolutely nothing. There is space in there. As we talked about, there's space. Okay? Can you take space out? Very difficult. Okay. What else is in there? It's not void. Yeah? So even if you take things out one by one, you'll realize that what remain is, what about this quantum fields and gravitational fields?
I agree with you.
Yeah. So when we think about nothing, we just mean simply like nothing means nothing of matter and so on. But matter is not just the opposed to nothing. So there are things which we say nothingness is the absence of space, time, matter, energy, quanta, gravitational fields, even possibilities.
I agree.
Yeah. In such nothingness, which is the absence of everything, such a state can exist if we exist now as something. Can there be a time in the past, let's say 16.95 billion years ago, if there's such a thing, because the universe is actually not that old, according to science. 16.8, right? So if I were to use this arbitrary number, would you say there was absolute nothingness at that point?
Well, you wouldn't be informed to know.
Well, you wouldn't know, because the only observable point you can take as a measurement of the beginning of the universe is the Big Bang. So that's not taken as the start of the universe, that's taken as the start of time. And time is obviously represented by who can observe time, which is us.
We are a prism of time.
And being within the universe, within the point at which time is being experienced, you can't experience time outside of that dimension.
Yeah, because we are epistemically we are limited and confined within this time frame, right?
Yes.
Within this particular universe. So it's difficult to talk about things outside.
Yeah.
But as you realize,
What we can observe.
as you realize, since we're talking about now something which is outside of time, because we're talking about nothingness which has no time in it. Conceptually, we're talking about something that has no time, space, even possibilities of any existence. So we cannot then say at some point in the past such a thing can exist, because if that thing existed, even conceptually,
I mean, if nothing exists.
yeah, then nothing will follow.
Well, we're not saying, I don't say nothing exists.
I didn't say nothing.
Okay.
I didn't say anything.
Conceptually,
I'm just trying to understand your point.
conceptually,
I mean, the irony is, I think all this, that 500 years ago, you would say that in space there is nothing. But now, we're saying in space, there's loads of stuff.
no, our understanding has improved.
As we go.
And that's what I'm saying. Based on our understanding of the reality,
Now.
if we understand what quantum fields are, and we are saying the absence of quantum fields, that means this is totally getting rid of our known universe and its physical laws and its properties. So if such a thing existed, that cannot give rise to our physical universe. Because to give rise to physical universe, you need to have potentialities of existence. You need to have something that can make something. Because without energy, can you do anything? Basic physics, right? You need energy. This nothingness is absence of energy.
How do you wait, why,
That's how we define it.
why are
Nothing.
we agreeing that nothing exists?
No, we don't. We are not saying nothing exists. We are saying what is
contention?
conceptually.
What is your, where are you going with it?
I will tell you.
I need to know.
So let's make these foundations first. Something, we know what something is. Matter, space, time, quantum fluctuations. That's something. I'm giving you the opposite of that. Conceptually.
Nothing, absolutely nothing.
Which is absolute nothing. Right. So can something, as we know, come from such a nothingness?
We're not saying it is.
no
can
one's saying.
it arise from it?
Yeah, but no one's saying nothing exists.
Okay, so do you agree then?
That we don't
Something-
know what, as someone said, we don't know what is beyond the Big Bang.
What I'm saying
not
is-
saying nothing exists beyond
Okay,
the Big Bang.
the reason I'm coming to this point, do you think something then has to always exist? Because such a thing, nothingness, can never exist. So that means something exists today, something must exist always, because it cannot come from absolute nothingness.
We don't know. Ourselves.
So you're saying it can come from absolute nothingness?
Say your point.
Sean?
The thing is, the state of the universe tends towards entropy. You know what entropy is?
Yeah.
It's disorder. But disorder can obviously create ordered structures, given enough time.
I disagree, because this is presupposing that within the physical laws there aren't laws that operate to form order within disorder.
So our existence is
Because chaos is not, there's no such thing as absolute chaos. Chaos, even if you look at it, how crystals form and so on. Do you really think this is just arbitrary?
No, it isn't. Of course, there are very complex interactions that between molecules, between functional groups, between electrons and protons, that cause those.
So there are inherent physical laws that operate how these things come about.
Yes.
So I'm saying
Those interactions, they don't stem from matter per se, they stem from randomness. No,
there is no such thing as randomness.
there is.
No.
Why?
Let me
Evaporate.
illustrate the point. Randomness is our not knowing all the factors behind it. Okay? I mean, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle is there because we can't predict which way it's going to be, right? But randomness is just our ignorance about the factors behind something. For example, if you have a coin that you want to toss and say whether it's going to be head, tail, or a side, if you knew all the factors in the equation, what the coin is made of, what kind of metal it is, the density of the metal, how far it's from the ground, and what the ground is made of, is it wood, is it plastic, is it like stone, what's the air temperature, humidity, all of these different properties and functions, you will almost like 99 whatever percent will say it's going to be head or tail. It's just that we don't know all these factors involved.
Say 100 then. Why didn't you just say 100? Why didn't you just say 100%?
Let's let a little bit of skepticism here. No, we know that, okay? Because I don't want to be an absolute determinist in the sense, because we believe as Muslim, I'm a Muslim, that there are a particular avenue in which we have freedom of our will, and that's why we can will to do some things, and because of our will we can be accountable for it. Otherwise, if everything is determined, then your action cannot have any consequences in terms of responsibility, because you're like a robot doing things which you are beyond your capability. You're just following what is already supposed to happen. But as Muslims, we believe there are universal, determinants by our Creator, but within our human sphere, there is amount of free will in which we can operate. Otherwise, we'll be like robots. There's no point of an accountability. So randomness and entropy we talked about. I'm saying, to give you another example, if I say, look, I have no money, my wallet is just blank, no money in there, I can't give you anything. I don't have any bank accounts, I don't have any friends to borrow money from. You know what I mean? I have no money. But in my wallet, there are space, there's quantum fluctuation and so on. So when we talk about nothingness, as what we explained to you in terms of its concept, if something exists today, this something, if you think about it, it cannot be a result from absolute nothingness.
I agree. We agree with it.
In that case, here is the consequence of that understanding. Something has to always exist.
I mean, yeah, sure. Something.
So
Energy,
let's not define what it is, but something, as opposed to nothing.
Yeah.
According to scientists, the universe had a beginning. Okay.
Our universe, that's what I said, the beginning of time.
Yeah. So even though there might be something else before that, because before is meaningless in our scientific understanding, because time.
I mean, you agree the universe had a start?
Of course, our universe had a start.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So you agree in that?
But our universe, if our universe had a start with time and space, so can we really meaningfully talk about before? But we're saying there has to be always something. Always is bigger and longer in duration than 16.8 billion years.
Sure, of course.
So I assume where you're going is that always is God.
before we
I assume you guys
no,
know.
this has to be a conclusion that we have to make ourselves. If we exist now, there has to be something always. That is logical, rational, and that is something that...
On the same page.
Good. If such a thing exists, always, this thing must exist with its own inherent properties without being given by something else. So are you saying there's something else prior to that? Where do we stop?
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Okay, so now let's start with a thing that always exists without a beginning. Would it not have inherent properties that it has eternally without a beginning?
What do you mean by properties, though? That's a very vague statement.
Okay, a thing that exists. We exist. Are we devoid of properties?
He's physical, I can touch him, but...
No. Everything, you can think, even if you go down to quarks, there are properties within it.
Yes.
It behaves in a particular way. We might not know everything about how quarks function in a quantum fields and so on, but it has inherent properties. Otherwise, science would be meaningless. I mean, we're trying to understand from the Newtonian physics to Einsteinian physics to our new quantum mechanics and quantum world, but still, there are inherent laws within it, the way things work. So properties are embedded within it. So thing that exists always without a beginning must also have properties.
But energy doesn't necessarily have physical properties. You can create matter.
You're assuming it's energy. Okay, let's talk about, suppose it's energy, always there. From energy to anything to proceed, an eternal cause, and to have an effect which is finite like our universe, it cannot happen unless the energy has some kind of will and choice putting in place. Because an eternal cause will always have eternal effect. Imagine an eternal flame. Will it ever be removed from the heat and the light? It will always be there with it.
I mean, you talk about quantum mechanics. You know that electrons can be waves, right?
Electron can be waves, okay?
Does that wave have mass?
It doesn't have to have mass.
But does it have mass?
What do you think?
Not really, no.
Because wave is a different kind of functionality.
Right. Yeah. Electrons have mass.
Yeah. So the way it behaves. So even if you were to bring, say, the light, wave and particle duality of light, for example, and go into photons and so on, it doesn't mean that things that we observe, that these things doesn't have inherent properties which they follow inherently. So question is, the things that they follow, it's like following by the letter, by the book. Where does it arise from? Does it have a choice? Or is it something that's organizing, something that is determining its function? So we are saying if there was an energy, whether it's electrical energy, magnetic energy, whatever type of energy, to have a finite effect while it's being eternal, because that's what we're trying to examine. If the eternal thing, if that is energy, how does it produce a finite effect? A finite effect can only come from an eternal cause if there's a choice involved. It decides to choose to make a finite.
No. I mean, these things.
Okay, explain to me how does an eternal cause produce a finite effect? It's a well-known subject discussed in philosophy.
Well, these philosophy, sure. We're talking about science.
We're talking about science is based on the philosophy, because axiomatically it has all these philosophical assumptions even though before it operates. Science believes in certain assumptions in which, like for example, you are real, the universe is rational. These are all philosophical assumptions already, and consistent, and lots of other things. So I'm saying, to give you another example, if energy is there, how does it transform things in a manner in which there is organization and complexity?
These things come about
without it being conscious and without possessing a will.
Sure. I mean, these things come about through random interactions that produce stable intermediates that propagate to create mass. And
that is an idea of biology and evolution which still is very problematic.
Wait,
but when it comes to Evolution and biology has so many different ways of explaining how life originated in terms of the abiogenesis and how life evolved. There's two things.
Because this is related to about the idea of randomness as well. So, okay, explain why is evolution problematic?
Okay. Do you know about Drosophila?
Yes.
How many times we experimented on it and we tried to modify it?
Thousands.
And what happens afterwards? It's still a Drosophila. It doesn't become anything other than a Drosophila. There is a specific species boundary programmed within itself. So even though you try to program and alter the modified, the genetic sequence of it, you can get a half a wing.
Yeah, but no one's
I'm saying
to turn it into a horse.
No, I'm saying even with genetic modification, which is not random, which is intentional, still we can't cross the species boundary.
Yeah.
So the idea that randomness.
But then also,
let me explain.
I'm saying your point there is no one's trying to cross the species boundary. No one's trying to cross the species boundary. I mean,
why not?
because it's feasibly impossible. At the moment.
Wait.
But I mean,
Remind me your name.
Connor,
Sean, Kieran. Yeah, Connor.
yes.
The idea that one species evolved to another species, okay, it's already a belief hold among the evolutionists.
It's not belief. It's a theory that has been pretty much.
Yeah, when I say belief based on their scientific theories, right? Okay, that's what they believe in.
And evidence.
Yeah. Call it evidence, okay? Questionable evidence, it's still evidence. Right. So what I'm saying is, the idea that you can have all of this, which came about, and we're finding it difficult, I'm saying, okay, why leave it to randomness? Actually, try to intentionally change it. And the result is still, we don't cross the species boundary.
Because we haven't tried. But also,
really?
But also, we have to understand, in order to prove that evolution exists, okay, also actually, we have to find what is a species.
That's a big question, because a species is defined by biologists in different ways. If you want to talk about the current understanding of species,
does have definition.
Let's talk about. We're talking about a species. A species.
To define what species means.
Yeah. Are you saying two different bacteria species are two different bacteria? Bacteria is a bacteria within its broader categories. You can have subspecies within it.
Yes.
So I am not talking about all this Homo sapiens. I'm just talking about
bacteria, though. No, we can observe evolution in bacteria.
But I'm saying
we can literally change.
All you see a bacteria within its development and alteration, still a bacteria. It's still a bacteria. It hasn't become anything else.
Do you know what mitochondria is?
We've been breeding dogs.
Yes.
We've been breeding dogs
for
hundreds of years.
Yes.
And still a dog. Look how many ways.
Yeah, but can a chihuahua mate with a wolf?
No, a chihuahua.
Can it mate with a wolf? Yes.
The wolf is a different species.
No, they're not. Dogs are derived from wolves.
No. Your assumption is derived. Is that wolves?
They are derived. We obtain wolves into dogs. The chihuahua can no longer mate with a wolf.
Is a wolf a dog?
No.
Okay.
We have defined.
Do you have the same genetic sequence?
What I'm trying to say is.
Yeah, but we
a wolf and a dog. A wolf and a dog.
But they are literally the same thing that derive from the same.
I want to understand something. The genetic sequence between a wolf and a dog are the same.
Very similar.
I didn't ask about similarity.
Our genetic sequence is not the same.
Look,
doesn't mean
our genetic sequence are similar in various similarity with a potato. Connor, with a potato.
Yes.
Right. So I'm saying.
But you know why then?
Not about. No. You're going into this phylogenetic tree. Look. You're going into the phylogenetic tree, which is an assumption. I'm gonna move down in a different way of thinking. Okay, I'll tell you why. Okay. The species that you're talking about, genetic sequence, human beings. Roughly, we have a similar kind of genetic sequence. Human beings.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very similar.
Yeah, percentage-wise, very minute. Okay. But in fact, this is so. If you were to take that kind of the divergence in disagreements in our genetic sequence. Is this the level of genetic sequence disagreement between wolf and a dog?
I don't know.
It's more.
Well,
you can correct me next time when you come along, but as far as I know, it's more. So my point is, even though we think these kind of randomness produces this event, fundamentally there is a flaw in these kind of assumptions. Because if you look at the whole genetic sequence in the programs, there are genes that are there. It seems like there's genetic switches, switch on and off, on and off. And it tells you, you should, okay, this is how it's going to do that protein translations and so on and so forth. It has, this program, you are assuming, as evolutionary biologists assume, it came by randomness and chance.
No, I'm not.
Okay, how did it come by? Programmer?
No.
Good. So if there was...
Let me explain why it comes by.
Go ahead.
It comes upon selective pressures.
Okay. So
Here's the thing. Basically, let's say you can't. You're stuck in the wild. You can't make fire. You don't know how to make fire. If I said you're going to live in the North Pole for 5 days, you will try your damn hardest to make fire.
yeah.
And
Okay.
if you make fire, you will survive.
Okay.
If you don't make fire,
Okay.
you'll die.
If I flap my wings, generation after generations, I flap my wings. One generation, next generation, maybe say a million years. Would that selective pressure grow our wings on me?
No, because there is no selective pressure.
So you are self-refuting your very concept.
No, no.
Okay, go ahead.
Why are you talking about you? You don't need wings. It won't, in fact,
No.
reproductive success.
Connor, you see, now you're saying somehow our genetic sequence understands our desires and our choices.
Just understand this, guys.
Does it or does it not?
Does not.
Good.
No, wait.
No. Let me make my point. Let me make my point and then explain. Since the genetic sequences and what's going to happen to them, it is independent of our desires and our wishes. What is selective pressure?
Selective pressure is about whether you reproduce or not based on your characteristics.
Okay, reproduction. So if I feel like, okay, if I grow wings, I can actually travel from one place to the other faster, and I can start mate with other species of the same kind. I have, think about it.
No.
Any gene pool, anything that you have here, you have limitations. You have a selective amount that you can mate with. If you now have an advantage in which you can go and fly to another community, community.
Being able to fly is such a radical change, such a short amount of time.
It's not about radical change.
It is.
I'm arguing against advantage of reproduction. I am saying you have more of a chance to reproduce in another group over there, or another group over there, another group over there, compared to, why not?
I mean, we have to define
Why not?
in regards to which scenario.
No, I'm just telling you. You have human beings, according to you, they're animals in this evolutionary tree.
Yes.
Animals, they want to reproduce, they have to mate, right?
Yes.
Now you have a closed group, say let's say London, imagine that's London and that's it, there's nothing else beyond London. There's all space. And there's another community there in China and Indonesia and somewhere else. The chances you have for mating with this community, there's always going to be competition. Yes or no?
Yes.
Competition. So you might not be the alpha male, or even the alpha male may not even get the right mate. So there's always going to be competition pressure. If you now have an advantage of going to another community in which there's more of a gene pool, more of a communities, you are...
Be alpha male.
Wait. It doesn't have to be alpha male. It doesn't have to be alpha male. Your reproductive opportunities are more...
Why?
I just told you, you have a larger pool
Having a
now.
larger pool is not increasing reproductive success.
People... Okay, let's go to the bottom of it. In terms of reproduction, okay? Male mating male. Male having homosexual relationship with male.
Yes.
Woman having homosexual relationship with woman. Is there a genetic advantage?
No.
So is homosexuality something that we should be proud of?
I mean, I have no opinion about it.
No. Evolution.
That's
You
not
believe by
scientific.
science? No. I know it's very difficult for you to now, to admit something or confess something. But think about it, Connor.
That's not a scientific
No. It's not an emotional argument. This is talking about reproduction. In reproductive processes, you have male mating male and woman mating woman.
Really?
Now,
It happens.
this is what people are doing. So that means they have less of an advantage of reproduction, right?
I mean, zero. Zero.
Zero advantage. So is this a behavior that is programmed by biology?
I mean,
Or are the biology leftovers? Like visceral organs? Is this what it is? Are there biological leftovers in which they will be dying out?
we don't necessarily understand that right now.
We do. As you said, reproduction is...
No, we don't have an
the species...
scientific explanation for homosexuality is not understood.
No, this is all about
But also there are no
reproduction
selective
processes,
pressures
right?
anymore.
So you want to reproduce because you want to pass on and continue your genes, right?
Yes.
You want to know how much of reproductive success you can have. Now we have an example in which you have zero reproductive success, mating male, woman, mating male. All that does is just simply fulfills their sexual desires. Okay?
but-
People can have sex with a tree. Some people can have all these fetishes, right? They can have sex with
Where are you
animals.
going with this?
No, what I'm going is, when we talk about reproduction, we need to really talk about what scientific method is. So you have to admit, from the scientific point of view, these individuals who are actually exhibiting homosexual behavior,
sidetrack? 'Cause I never even mentioned-
no. Why is it? Why is it? Evolution seems to be.
I mean, but you assume you're.
No.
Let me say.
May I will take away. I will stop talking about homosexuality, but I want to make one point though.
Because I haven't gone to.
No, I will make one point though.
I'm not.
When we talk about people who may not believe in God, as I explained about nothingness and why something has to exist, what I notice all the time, it's not new, the discussion always seems to direct towards evolution because that is the comfort zone of agnostic atheists.
No.
And
I'll tell you why I said to you why I went to evolution.
You can say, let me finish my point because I'm going to conclude and leave that subject. And then when we bring in actually reproduction and the success of reproduction and the selective pressure and the genetic advantage and what you have in terms of how reproductive opportunities that you have, and you bring in homosexuality in, we find that it's become a subject of taboo. Do you know why?
I'll tell you why I'm
Okay.
frustrated.
Go on.
I don't see why you brought this up. It's completely irrelevant to
It
genetics.
is relevant.
Because
Reproduction.
no,
are no
because
selective pressures
because
anymore.
one, there are no selective pressures, but also two, by bringing up homosexuality, you are therefore assuming that it's passed down genetically, which it is not, and therefore you are by saying.
Are you saying it's not genetic?
It's not passed down genetically.
Are you saying homosexuality is not determined in our genes?
Correct. As far as we can tell, we do not know.
Right. What did we used to believe previously? We are born that way. So are you now confirming to everyone that we are not born this way?
Your haircut, was that born?
No, let's talk about-
No. Is your haircut determined by your genes?
Yes.
No, it's not. You went to a barber.
My hair is determined.
Haircut.
I cut
Haircut.
it. I cut it.
Exactly.
Right. But the
There
hair.
are some things that aren't
Okay.
determined by your genes.
You made a preference to have that hair.
So how people are in their sexual preferences, fine. Let us now conclude then and agree. Our sexual preferences is not determined the way we are born. Is that what you're saying?
It can be. It cannot.
It's not what can be or not. You have to really say things which is
I
clear.
haven't researched this. You haven't researched this.
I have.
You have not.
Of course we
You
have.
led a study.
I don't have to let us study. There was one of the massive studies that we done
And what did
recently.
it say?
It said we could not identify a single gene.
It's okay. There is no single gene that's responsible for homosexuality.
You asked me, I'm telling you, the researchers had to advisor group with the LGBTQ community, produce a website beforehand, publish the results, liaising with them, what it means of the results, because it had to be toned down, because now we have all these people, the LGBTQ community, for example, they had all this belief that, you know what, we are born that way, and now genetic study comes along and smashes the idea and
No,
saying,
because-
well, let me finish.
No, because you're saying that everything we are born with is determined by our genes. Do you know what epigenetics is?
No. This is what we're referring to, epigenetics.
You know what epigenetics is?
I do.
Okay.
Okay.
You
Certain
know,
thing-
therefore, me and Karen are identical twins. She's my brother. We have exactly the same genome. We're not exactly the same because we have different. The way we're constructed in the brain is different. We have epigenetical differences.
Right. So because of these epigenetic differences, so what is exactly determining in the womb of the mother your sexual differences?
Can be. As far as I tell, we don't know.
So now,
We can't ask the baby whether
there's
they're gay or not.
There's two different kinds of studies. One is a major study recently published in which we couldn't identify a gene. Okay, the five or
That was the conclusion, not a single gene.
Yeah.
There could be multiple.
The multiple genes were identified, they're actually responsible for something else, like our smell and so on and so forth, right? So it's not that particular gene is responsible for homosexual behavior, we've excluded that. The reason why it's watered down.
Sexuality. I don't understand.
No.
How is this relevant?
No. what I'm saying is it's about reproductive success.
Okay.
So,
Bring it back to that.
so the other study that was done even before that is about the twin studies, identical twins, exactly identical twins, and they showed that not all identical twins, in fact, 40, 45%, 55%, and so on, the differences in terms of whether this is heterosexual or homosexual. So they concluded from that major studies of identical twins involving thousands of identical twins that it's not actually based genetically in terms of how you're born. So let's leave this subject aside. The point I was making, Connor, Sean, and Ken, is when we talk about evolutionary success in terms of reproductive success, you have more of an advantage when you have access to another community of humans.
So I was trying to say not necessarily.
Let's just let him go.
If you have,
I mean,
okay. If you have one human being, Imagine you have you and two male, okay, two male, and one female. So you have that's one option. Another option is you have two males and two females. Is your reproduction opportunity greater from the first one, or same or less?
I mean, ask all the guys here. Just because there are 3.5 billion women in the world doesn't mean reproductive success is increased.
You're missing the point.
You have morals. The richest people still have access to the
this is nothing about morality.
I'm not saying
science,
I'm saying
evolutionary biology doesn't have morality.
The population
embedded
increasing,
within it.
therefore, it directly means that your reproductive success increases.
May I hear your response?
33% of Generation Z identify as LGBTQ. Is that natural?
I'm not arguing that, Paul. That's completely
let's okay.
I'm not arguing that.
Let's leave that. Let's not. You know what? We have to leave this LGBTQ. It's a very sensitive subject for many people, right? So let's not go there. But let's talk about this reproductive success. So if you have two males and one female, and two males and two females, and you have two males and 100 females. So when you have one female to mate between the two, and you have 100 female, are you seriously saying, even scientifically, you have the equal reproductive?
Can you get to your? Let's just say
we have to agree first of all in terms of how we operate with our scientific paradigm. So we're now dealing with science, and we need to understand how randomness, this is what you pointed to, can bring about from energy to this transformation, which is very organized and very complex. This is our explanation of randomness, and you came to explain through in biological processes how this is possible.
Which I don't think you understand.
Sir, if you have
Correct?
a random mutation which lets you mate beneficially with a pool of women, you will pass on that gene more than if you didn't.
Why do good-looking people have
Random
more mates than
mutation. Look, random mutation.
You just said if you had wings, if you sprouted wings suddenly, if you had a gene that made
No, you can't have.
more.
You said if you could grow wings and mate with more women, you would be more successful.
I'm saying
that is the
you're saying it's true.
That's the
But you're saying,
definition.
but you're disagreeing first. Now you're agreeing with me.
I say it's not
No,
necessary.
I'm saying, is there more of an advantage, an opportunity?
I mean, it depends.
Why do you say possibly?
Because every single gene only operates successfully or unsuccessfully in the circumstances or environment it's in.
When two members of a species are mating, having reproduction, what's happening? You have a chemical, biological interactions. It's not that only alpha males are being successful, is it? In any community.
In lions.
There will be more successful.
Only?
In lions.
And what about in humans?
We don't have the system.
So let's just say that on average, alpha males will be more successful,
we can
but
talk about
not
that.
necessarily the case. You might pass on your genes to them.
For example, lions, if you go with lions, the strongest, biggest lions mate with the women. Do you agree with that?
Okay.
So do you agree? Yes or no?
Possibly.
It's true. It's true. Yes, we can agree it's a fact.
Yeah.
Therefore, only the genes of the strongest, biggest lions will get passed on.
Yeah. But what happened to humanity?
What?
What happened in the human species?
That's the
Why
same
not
thing.
the same thing? Why is it different? Why
Is it
humans
same?
and lions different?
Okay, is it the same?
On average, it'll be the same, but there'll be some
Sorry,
weak genes passed on anyway. Because
No, is it the
that
same?
will happen.
Is it the same?
Wait.
There will be more strong genes passed on. Yes, that is true.
Also, why is it relevant that they're different?
No, I'm saying, when we talk about randomness produces strong genes, so randomness should be able to, with the selective pressure, create wings. I just give you an example of wings. No.
Why is it the environment?
Connor,
If I said in the sky, like 20 feet above us, there's a
Okay.
wall, like
What are
ceiling of fire.
the traits of
You having wings
what are the
back
traits?
in.
What are the traits of alpha male?
It depends on the environment. No, it depends on the environment. Depends on the environment.
In an environment, whatever the traits are, with selective pressure, imagine it's about speed, how fast you run.
Okay.
And now imagine someone just keeps running and running and become faster.
That's not how evolution works.
Why would speed?
If you were born with a random mutation that let you run faster, then you would pass on that gene.
No, but
You
it's
can't
only
run
relevant.
faster and pass on a gene that makes everyone else run faster. That's not how evolution works. You have to be born with that random mutation.
The problem with randomness is you're saying it's like this. You have a program.
There's a distinction between a genetic, a spontaneous mutation, and evolution being random. Evolution is not random. Evolution is very specific. It's not random at all.
What controls it?
Selective pressure, as I said at the start.
Selective pressure. So now, if the pressure is such that, then you can have what happened with the
Okay, here we go.
giraffe? There was selective pressure in which they're going to die out. Baby giraffes, they're going to die out because the trees are not tall enough. Most of the leaves are at the top.
Okay.
So is this how they grew tall necks? Lamarckism.
Next.
Tall necks.
Oh, next.
Is this how they grew tall necks?
Something like that.
That is how
mean,
fallacious people argued
wait,
before
explain.
Lamarckism,
Explain.
in which the way you're explaining now, this is what they believed, and now it's proven to be false.
That's not true. No. That theory that's not right.
That's what I'm saying.
No,
the theory was proven to be
Okay,
false.
that was
Just
Lamarck.
because you need to now have to succeed in even living and passing your genes,
that's correct.
that you have to keep on growing taller and taller.
Marx said, whatever happens during your lifetime is passed on. Darwin said, no, that's incorrect. Only what you're born with is passed on.
Yeah. So
There's
imagine.
a key difference you have to understand.
You have a selective
Maybe
pressure.
you have to not grow next and then pass it on.
No, you have a pressure now. There's hardly anything to eat.
Okay.
So what's going to happen? The ones that have long necks and then longer and longer necks, they're going to make more success. Are you saying now that pressure somehow makes them longer necks?
No,
I'm
not saying that.
grow your neck.
Exactly.
If you born with a long neck.
Sean,
What I'm saying is, those giraffes that were born with long necks will be the only ones to survive.
Yes.
And therefore, because they're the only ones that exist...
false.
No,
That's
false.
your idea.
Why is that false?
Okay. Did only the giraffe survive, or there are other species which were shorter than the giraffe survive?
No, because
but
they
they
have
will
different feed
eventually die
sources.
out.
The other animals that giraffes don't eat grass.
That's what I'm saying. You don't need longer necks.
Wait,
You
you're
don't
saying
need.
giraffes should evolve the ability to eat worms? Sorry.
No, I'm saying every species is designed in such a way to utilize its environment.
They evolve to make the best of their environment.
Okay, let's go back then, because you're talking about evolution. The first cell that came from inorganic matter.
Yes.
Okay. Explain that to me. How you come to this understanding that it just happened without any design.
Starts with atoms.
Yeah.
I mean, understand what is DNA? You need to understand what that is, because cells come from DNA, essentially. What's
Yeah,
What is
DNA.
DNA? What is DNA?
So DNA is your A, C, T, G, and all the other
What are ACTG?
adenine, guanine, cytosine,
What are those?
chemicals, chemical structures,
So we
sugars.
agree these things came from chemicals.
Okay.
And you
these
agreed
things,
before-
these things are not just these things. These things are structured in such a way, in a particular design. An A is not the same as a T.
Yes.
Similar, but
Right. Who's talking about similarity difference? I mean, it's the same. So they're designed in such a way, and that's why you have all these
Not
programs.
designed in such a way.
it happened to
Okay.
exist in a stable
I
structure.
would like to hear your explanation of how you have this complex organization about proteins, for example. You know, proteins, the things.
Are you seriously denying the existence of evolution?
Am I seriously denying?
It's a theory, right?
No, I'm asking it.
No.
It's fact.
I know scientists find it comfortable.
Smart guy, you were saying before.
I was telling you.
Let me state my point. You were saying before how you believe in all the physics side of things. Yeah? You were saying you went into space and you started talking about quarks, all these different things in space, and I was like, okay, he knows his stuff. But then when you apply it to biology, you seem to ignore all the scientific logic which you have in your head.
I'm ignoring? What am I ignoring? Okay, let me take an example.
Like, for example, you said...
let me give an example. Fossil records, right?
Yes.
Evidence. Hear me out. Fossil records, right? Fossil records. In biology textbooks, we are told this is an evidence or proof of evolution. So you have one layer, another strata, right? The belief is that the uppermost strata, the species within it, evolved from the bottom layer.
Not necessarily. I mean, over many
Okay. So what is the understanding?
Sorry?
What is the understanding? The layers that we have a species within this.
I mean, we have to be very specific. Because by saying that, you're ignoring phylogenetic trees.
No, phylogenetic tree is a model that people invented.
Model. No,
it's not provable model.
My last point. My last point is a lot of people who deny the existence of...
How many models of evolution are there today?
Let me finish my point. Those people who deny the existence of evolution often deny the fact that we can literally evolve bacteria, evolve viruses ourselves.
And still bacteria.
People that go through are the people that.
And still.
Why is it going
Connor, just concentrate.
My brain, how much you're misrepresenting evolution. Evolution is literally a metaphysical project. You can't observe it in a lab test, in a control. Absolutely not. The whole premise of evolution is it's over millions and millions of years.
Guys,
no,
you all know what COVID existed.
No.
Did
you can witness adaptations. You can see no, but it's another strain of COVID. You don't see species to another species. You cannot see it in a lab-controlled environment. Bro, it's all based on unobservable. That's fine, by the way. We're not saying, throw it away.
That's okay.
But
No. We can still talk about it. Don't worry. This is not
Popper and other atheists and atheist philosophers of science all tell you, like, it's a metaphysical project. It's not the same kind of science you're talking about when you're doing lab-tested science. It's a theory, and if you know your science, you would know that...
my science.
Yeah, okay, good. So then, 1 second. So, okay, fantastic. So then you'd know that the highest level of certainty you have in science is a theory, not absolute proven fact. And the evidence of this is the thing we call scientific paradigm shift.
Is that a theory, or is
Oh my God, that's an observable. That's an observable
We can
fact.
observe evolution.
No, you can't. No, you can't. This is nonsense. This is nonsense rubbish.
Put your hand up here if you
Let me say something. Yeah.
I have studied this. We have observed evolution in a lab, which he
people
denies.
who are heading E.O. Wilson, what's it called, Roos, and many other philosophers of science who believe in evolution say you're talking rubbish because
why do you believe that and not Richard Dawkins?
By the way, because Richard Dawkins, according to E.O. Wilson, is not even a true scientist.
Why is he not a true scientist?
Because he's a science popularizer. He's a science journalist.
No, don't feel this has become agitated. Let's conclude it in a second.
I'm not
Let's conclude.
I am engaging. He's barely. Why would I acknowledge Richard Dawkins if his peers barely acknowledge him as a scientist? He's a dogmatic, his philosophy of science atheist peers. E.O. Wilson literally said, quoted. You know what he said to him? He's like, he was asked in an interview about why. What do you think of Richard Dawkins talking bad about you on Twitter and stuff? He's like, I don't have spats with journalists. I only have what's called spats with real peers and
you believe this guy
because he's the guy that came up with other advancements in the field of group selection. You know, group selection. He's the guy behind that. So the point is that Richard. And here's the thing: the overwhelming evidence.
You're ignoring him.
The overwhelming. No, I'm not ignoring him. I'm ignoring him because I understand philosophy, and when I hear Dawkins, I recognize how ignorant he is of philosophy, and especially philosophy of science. And he'll even admit it. He'll say Richard Dawkins will literally gladly admit. Dawkins will say, leave the philosophy, don't worry about it. When Albert Einstein and everybody before him that did scientific achievements and gave contributions to the scientific world would say, one of the most important things in science is understanding the philosophy. Why? Because if you don't understand the philosophy, you'll get conclusions in your tests that are, as in you'll get the tests, but you won't understand the meaning behind the conclusions in your test. You'll go to false things. Darwin himself was a believer. You know that. Darwin believed in God, and he even said
everyone believed in God at that time.
Sorry?
Everyone believed in God.
but then why did he die not believing in God? I thought everybody believed in God at that time. But when no. When he died, not necessarily. He died an agnostic. So you don't even. So you're just saying, back in the day, nobody believed in God.
You just said
No.
Wait. Can we just back up?
Go on.
You just said Darwin was believing in God, and then you said he didn't
let me now. I don't know.
Believe in God.
Yeah, let me elaborate. He died,
Hey.
and let me explain. He explained why he died an agnostic. He had nothing to do with evolution. He in fact said evolution has no impact on the belief in God, his own personal belief. And when he came out with the origin of species, he was still a believer in God. The reason he died an agnostic, you could look at it. This is all Darwin's personal writing, not my own claims. The reason was the problem of evil. He was somebody who went through a lot of suffering in his life, and he saw a lot of suffering in his children, and it's made him question God. But even that never made him die an atheist. So here's what's clear, and he even not just that, ladies and gentlemen. He also wrote letters and was worried about how dogmatic atheists are using evolution as this new.
How is this relevant?
I'm telling you how it's relevant, because people, because you're like Dawkins this, Dawkins that. Why do I not take from Dawkins? Because Dawkins literally says.
Say why I take. I'm saying why are you taking from one person and ignoring another person?
No, I'm not taking from one person. I'm taking from the consensus. In philosophy of science.
Yeah, but why?
One second.
Bro, how did you get from
I have no
Neanderthal to
problem. Hey,
Homo
one second.
sapien?
Let me make it
How
clear
did they
to him,
get
because he thinks that I'm a.
How did you get
How
from
about this?
Neanderthal to Homo sapien?
No, brother. Don't get to the details.
We're not
Details
going
are
into
important.
detail.
Listen, bro. Let me make something clear to you. Let me accept. I want to accept something for you.
prefer
I want to accept something. I want to accept something with you. Brother, please don't go into the detail. Listen, I want to accept something with you very clearly. I'll accept you very easily. The consensus in the scientific community is that the best explanation for the development of life is evolution. No problem. And I'll take.
That answers your question.
No, it's not a fact, bro. You're like just demonstrating on camera how little you know about philosophy of science. You're just you're a lab scientist.
Wait.
You're a lab
Maybe
scientist.
we can explain what I mean by
go on.
fact.
Literally every scientist believes evolution. The difference is a lot of scientists.
Look how you sound. Believes evolution. It's science of faith. So is evolution of faith? What do you mean believes
Understands
evolution?
evolution to be fact. Sorry.
No, absolutely not. No, you don't. Okay, so why? Okay, if evolution is a fact, why are there multiple competing hypotheses? Oh, it's a fact. Why are there multiple competing hypotheses?
No.
Why? Okay, how about this? Why did Newtonian physics?
Let me ask you a question.
How about this? Why don't you read Peter Cole's? Why don't you read? Because you said, why do you take from one person? Why don't you read Peter Cole's?
Let's hear your question. Go
He
ahead.
said there are multiple competing hypotheses of evolution.
That's what every scientific theory.
Don't interrupt me here. Evolution is a fact. The methods of evolution are contested. It's different.
Oh, let me show again the amount of ignorance you have on now the history of science. Peter Cole's Oxford publication on the Intro to Cosmology gives one of the most beautiful examples of a refutation of exactly what you're saying. Yeah, an exact refutation. He says Newton's conception and
He doesn't
Newton's.
actually
One second.
engage with the subject matter. He's picking up random things, which means
I am engaging. You're not listening. You're just cutting me off.
Distracting.
No. I am engaging.
Relax,
But you see, you're getting worried because I'm cornering you, and you're just trying to distract from it.
Relax.
No. Let me show you how you're wrong. Because you're saying, only the methodologies competed.
Tell me you're
upon.
wrong without quoting some random guy I've never heard.
It's not random.
Peter Cole's Oxford published is random guy. Oh, who cares? Who cares? Who have you heard? Who have you? Who are you?
I'm not quoting people.
It's not
Really
about
frustrating. See this level of arrogance. See, I actually don't like to be like.
I'm surfacing evidence. You're surfacing random quotes.
Yeah, from Oxford published, peer reviewed.
There were loads of-
Peter Cole's cosmologist.
There are loads of people who are peer reviewed.
Okay, let's
No, I'm not picking one. I'm giving you multiple throughout this conversation.
It's okay. Let's
But anyway,
go back.
No. Even if he walks away, let's just demonstrate.
No.
Demonstrate
It's
the
okay.
level of
We don't want to go
dishonesty.
feeling
the level
some
of
kind of-
dishonesty because
Animosity.
No. I'm only
We came to
being
discuss.
like this because you're demonstrating a high level
We
of
can still
dishonesty. Because
understand
when you're
our
saying,
differences in
it's a fact, and the only thing that's debated is the methodology or the mechanism. Well, let's look at what's called this exact situation in cosmology. For 200 plus years, for 200 years, people like you said Newton's way of looking at the world of physics, it's irrelevant, mate. I'm doing an analogy. You don't exist 200 years ago. Have you read Newtonian physics? It doesn't even matter because I'm not even going to get into the details of it. The point is that 200 years people went around like you ignorantly saying, Newtonian physics or the Newtonian view of the natural world is a fact. You know what he says in his book? Einstein came 200 years later, absolutely demolished. He says demolished, and he says supplanted Newton's view and replaced it completely. And he also says he rewrote the way we see, the way we look at physics. And this is actually also called scientific revolutions. And somebody else I'm gonna cite now because you say I only cite one person.
Have you heard of Thomas
Kuhn? Yeah.
They all cite the same things. Is this not concerning to you people?
This is something that you can go and read about it later.
Peter Coles, E.O. Wilson, Thomas Kuhn.
As if these are some sort of like legends.
Thomas Kuhn is something that you need to know. As a scientist, you need to know.
My brain's gonna explode.
It's okay, it's okay.
You as a random nobody, maybe with a bachelor's degree, think that you're better than the foundational texts that are taught in university.
Do you think you're better than the scientific consensus of?
No, I don't, because I already admitted your point that the consensus in what's it called in biology is that the best explanation is evolution. I have no problem with that. No, I'm not denying. I am denying that it is a fact because the highest, if you studied even a basic text in philosophy of science.
Do you mind explaining?
Tell me if it's not a fact.
Connor,
90% correct.
No, it's not.
Hold on. I think there's a fundamentally. Connor. I will let you understand something.
The best way.
Can I?
How did the first
Do you know in science
go back to the first thing.
highest level of certainty that we can reach?
You're gonna have to go back to the first.
No. What is it?
About evolution
What is it called? A fact?
No, what's the first thing?
Can you ever reach facts?
That's the
in
point.
science.
That's
Can you
the
reach
point.
absolute facts? Can you reach absolute facts?
Maybe you need to define
Something that corresponds with reality.
So understanding.
How did the fish even get here?
Can a hypothesis be absolute facts? Ever in science? Can it ever reach that?
Hypothesis isn't a fact. It's a presumption.
This again, just showing.
Why don't you start from the very basic?
Do you understand induction? Do you understand induction? Because that's the basic mechanism that science uses to do anything. Induction. You understand it? You understand it? You're literally a scientist. You study genetics.
Just using random words, man.
Induction is random words. It's literally the mechanism by which you do experiments, mate.
Okay, induce.
Slow down.
So then what is, inducing, now you're also, it's not random word now because you recognize it.
One thing where you have to
Not everyone induce and induction is the same thing, mate.
You just
same words.
Can you relax?
Never use this term because we're not.
Because maybe you're ignorant.
No.
Ismail and Connor, I think fundamentally what the gap, calm down. The gap is not every scientist.
Can I escape?
No.
You want to escape now because...
Brother!
Yes, go on.
Not every scientist who do scientific experimentations have gone into understanding the scientific method. I think that's what's been illustrated here.
That's not true. That's not true.
So, scientific method.
Gone online.
Connor. I was just trying to...
I'm literally...
Brother! I was trying to remove the gap between you, right? So, the scientific method is based on what he's calling induction. Okay? So maybe he can tell you the difference between induction and deduction and other sets of proofs and see whether you agree or disagree.
That's all.
Nothing is relevant to you.
That determines, whether something is a fact or not.
What you're doing is, we're talking about whether evolution is true or not.
No,
Is
it's
a fact or not? Fact or not?
Facts equals how true, you said how based it is towards reality.
No. You strictly said evolution is a fact. All I said to you is, it is a best explanation based on a limited data set which is ever growing and is a provisional best explanation.
How do you explain the fact
it's irrelevant because you're going to now go into some detail. It's nonsense. It doesn't matter.
No, this does matter. How do you explain the fact that in a lab we can turn one genome into a different genome?
That is irrelevant because I'm not arguing with you if evolution is the best explanation or not. All I'm telling you is, no. What is observable in a lab? Mate. No. Strip it down.
I actually think we're on the same level.
No.
What is evolution?
Sorry?
What did you say?
What did you say about the same level?
Relax.
You think we're not on the same level? I agree with you because I've actually read more than one person that it was Richard Dawkins. Yes. Listen.
What is evolution?
No. I'm not even interested in getting into details with you. Let's strip it back to the beginning. What is induction? Because you said facts, because science gives you facts. What is induction? Because science you said you induce.
This is to understand the methodology.
No, because what's the point of talking about science?
Let me say
what is induction?
If we can literally observe something changing its state,
oh my God, you're back into details.
Let me explain.
Details matter.
Okay,
I ignore details.
I just asked you about the definition of induction.
I don't care.
Okay, you don't care why you're here.
I don't care what definition is. I care is we can observe this happening.
It's very clear you don't care what the definition is.
We can observe.
It's very clear because you don't know.
You're just ignoring my point. We can observe a genome changing in real time, and therefore, you're still denying that is evolution.
Irrelevant.
You can see that. Why is that relevant? Tell me why.
Irrelevant. Mutation is not evolution.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not.
Why?
Simple. It's not.
You're not answering why.
I told you, I'm not interested. I'm not. It's irrelevant.
In the facts. You're not interested in the facts of what evolution are.
No, because no. Because what's observable, what's observable in a lab is different than a metaphysical project trying to determine origins. If you understand evolution, anyways, evolution is a process discussing the development of life, and it's characterized in the tree of life model. Yes, it is, mate. Absolutely. Yes, it is. It has nothing to say about the origin of life. Okay, fine. It's not.
How come you stopped evolving?
Okay.
Whatever you say. I'll ignore the philosophers of science.
How long have you been evolving for?
I'll ignore. No, brother.
Connor, that's not
That's
going
what he wants. He wants
the reason why.
Head out.
Wait.
I'm wasting my time if I can.
It's a waste of my time.
No,
I'm talking with time. 100%. No. I want to make it clear to the camera, yeah? Listen, one second, brother. Sorry, just 1 second, please. I hate being rough. Wallahi, I do. I swear by Allah, I hate being rough. It is the worst feeling to be rough to another brother. And this is not a form of da'wah to a direct da'wah to him, you know? Because when somebody has demonstrated over and over again a total and utter lack of understanding and a sense of superiority while doing this and arrogance while doing this and just spouting just from this pedestal that he thinks he's on, when he has no place to do this, it infuriates me, wallahi, because he's disseminating absolute falsehood. And then when I give him evidence to the contrary, this guy not only rejects it, but he then takes a poop on all these people who are PhDs, who are published scientists, who are peer-reviewed, only because they say something against him. You're citing one person, when he, on the other hand, only listens to Richard Dawkins. One person who's a science journalist, for God's sake. His peers don't respect him. Why should I? People who are PhDs don't respect him. He by himself is he's an ignoramus. If you watch his debates with people who are philosophically trained, they undress him, they strip him, they ragdoll him. These are atheists. They have no interest. They have no interest in trying to propagate an Islamic message. No interest. But there's even in fact atheist philosophers who say that I am embarrassed to read the writings of Dawkins. He is an embarrassment to
I think
to atheism.
Certain clarification needed, which we weren't able to. So when it comes to science, the level of certainty that it can reach, and when it comes to logic and other things in terms of when we talk about proofs. So when we talk about induction, okay, what is the difference between induction and deduction?
Yes, so he was talking a lot about facts, right? So yes, you could observe facts, but that's not what science is just. Like there's more to science. The whole science runs on a mechanism called induction, yeah? And induction is observing things in your particular, in your local, and then generalizing them to the unobservable. That's the point. You can't, the whole point is the mechanism, you're making the hypotheses based on the unobservable. You can't observe it, not in a lab, not anywhere. That's the point. That's why it's inductive. That's why it's not deductive. So when he says the theory of evolution is a fact, that's nonsense. Can you view data points that might give you good reason to believe in evolution and you could observe them? Sure, you could observe data points. The thesis, the hypothesis itself is not an observable thing. This is crazy. Like the level of just grandstanding and ignorance coupled with the arrogance is crazy, and this is why it's so important, to bash this down sometimes, because he says it with such confidence. I'm going to study genetics.
Arrogance is not confidence.
And a lot of people will take that confidence and think he's speaking truth, but this guy would get thrown out of by anybody who studied like bare bones, like some basic text in philosophy of science would laugh at him.
When it sounds like the world
Get thrown out of university.
It's really troubling, this is what's called scientism, Science has become a religion.
Yes.
It's a dog. Not even. It's worse. It's become a blind faith religion. Somebody's willing to blindly believe. They've read nothing. They've read like nothing. They've just heard their whole life that theories are facts that you should live your life based upon, and they will defend it to the death. This guy's prophet is Richard Dawkins. He will do anything that Richard Dawkins says, and he will believe anything that Richard Dawkins will tell him
Anyway,
to believe.
so I want to conclude in what I began with. The discussion started with, when we define nothingness, which is absence of everything, absence of something, bring about something? He agreed that you cannot have nothingness bringing about something like this universe in themselves. And he agreed also that there has to be always something. And the next question is, if there is something that always existed, it must exist with inherent properties. It cannot just exist without no properties. Everything has to have some properties. So the question is, what is that something? This would have been the next discussion. So one of the friends, Sean, is Connor, Sean, and Kian. Sean said it could be energy, and then we said, okay, fine. If this is energy, how do you explain energy without having consciousness and without having intent and choice, making transformation which are organized and complex? That is what we're trying to see how they explain it. So their friends came up with this argument, okay, we see that randomness produces all of these things, and then he gave example from biology. So this is where the discussion went from there.
Do you know why they like the reason they grunt to evolution, the reason they do, and the reason he was so against accepting that evolution is not a theory of origins, it's a theory, the development of life. He was so against it because he was running away from the idea the origin of life comes from a creator. He was running away and tried to piggyback on evolution. Evolution says nothing about the origin of life. That's the irony of it. It's a theory of origins, yet it's a theory of development, really. It's a development of life. And again, it does nothing to us as a Muslim, or even as a believer in God. No problem. You want to argue that the scientific data right now best explains evolution? Knock yourself out. No issues. Can we observe in a scientific community that the consensus right now is that evolution is the best explanation? No problem. We're not gonna lie about this. It's very clear. But can these conclusions change? Absolutely. How do we know this? The whole scientific community used to think the universe that was described as a static state model, eternal, does not expand, does not do anything. But then, with the inventions of the Hubble telescope, noticing redshift, we were able to see that in fact the universe expands. The point is that science does not come to absolute fact hypotheses. It comes to best explanation based on limited data set, which means they're provisional truths which can be revised with the new data set as it expands. And theories could be uprooted, and you could have a paradigm shift in science. You could have theories that are successful, empirically valid. Newton's what's it called, experiment theories and the way he viewed physics was empirically valid, and yet it turned out to be false. When Einstein came about, it showed it to be the case. So even passing tests does not say that something is absolutely true.
That's what we want people to understand, that science does not give you absolute truth. It gives you provisional understandings and explanations about the reality, which is ever prone to change and improvement, as we have seen. And that's why one of the most important books in this avenue is Thomas Kuhn's The Structure of Scientific Revolution, which my brother alluded to earlier. If you are interested in the subject, do read about it, because that is then will change your mind about science, scientism, and dogmatism, and then bring you back to reality when we talk about why revelation, guidance from our Creator can be the only source of absolute truth. And this is the point that we would have discussed, but obviously the environment wasn't conducive enough to continue the discussion. Inshallah, God willing, if you are more interested, we can continue this discussion where we will demonstrate why the only avenue in which we can have absolute certainty of knowledge is divine revelation. There are other avenues which are tools at your disposal, your fitra, your natural dispositions, your reasons, your intellect, and so on. But divine revelation through sending prophets and messengers with books or guidance is what we human beings should be aspiring to follow and accept and submitting to, because that will give you the certainty why you are here and what's going to happen to you when you die, and what happens to you after you die. Do you go to heaven or hell or not? So this is an important message to all of you. If you really want to understand the reality, you have to wake up from this dogmatism and scientism and bring your back yourself to what is called the reality. Have a reality check. Wa akhir dawana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Jazakallahu khairan, my brother.
One final thing, they are evolving. We got a trans community now.